And here we are again, probably a week later. I think things have been really busy at work. Okay, so this is taking far too much film time to do all this. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do next, and then I'll just show you it done. You've seen all the steps, making templates and stuff. Because quite frankly, it's taken me ages to film it, and it's kind of impinging on progress now. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a piece for here. Now to finish off, I'll do a lot of pass over the back of that wheel arch. Focus, here we go. Once I've made the bits and welded them all in, I'll probably show you a couple of the steps, but generally speaking, we'll try and whiz through this pretty quickly. Right, onwards. Well, as promised, I've brought you back to show you this arch when it's pretty much done. That's all the welding done anyway, I think. A little bit different to what you saw earlier on. There we go. Oh, focus, there we go. Video always makes the welds look terrible and horrible, but it's actually really not bad at all, I think. I'll show you underneath here as well, underneath the wing. There's the rear wheel arch, and I'll see if I can find the light somewhere for you. There we go. Right, yeah, you can see now. And I know it looks terrible on video, actually, but that's all absolutely solid. I haven't ground the welds down properly yet. But once they're all done and seam sealed, and we've got some Gravitex on there and some paint, it'll look absolutely fine. Bearing in mind it is under the wheel arch, but it is absolutely all solid now. The rust's all gone. Right, okay. Okay, so the time has come to make the big piece, the flat piece, which goes basically right across here. I'm going to try and make it in one big piece, make it nice and strong, make it out of thicker metal than was actually on the card in the first place. And cardboard template time first. Let's see how we get on. Here we go. So we're about halfway through making this template, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm making it up in pieces. Started off with one large piece going across, and then made a corner piece for here, corner piece for there. Just put another piece here, sellotape that in. Just put it on the other side. You can see that butts up to that side, so it's all pretty straight. Now I'm just going to make this curved piece for the end out of Kit Kat Chunky Peanut Butter Easter Egg. Marvellous. And there we have it, one completed template. Just got to get it out in one piece now. Basically that's the easiest way to do it, just do it piece by piece, and then fit it into the corner, tape it onto the, the bit that came before it, and eventually you end up with one big piece like this. Right, it's just to transfer that to a piece of metal and start cutting. Let's see how we go. This thing must be the biggest one, yes? It's huge. It's going to be, it's more than 12 inches long. Right, I'm just going to reinforce it with a little bit more tape so it doesn't fall to bits and it certainly doesn't move. We'll just give it a little trim and then we'll transfer it to a piece of metal. There we go, so that's all cut out. Right, now it's time to see how close it isn't. Right, I need 2 hands to do this, so I'll bring you back when it's kind of more or less in the gap. Let's see how we get on. Right, so this is all fitted now. Edges are all nice and clean. We've also cleaned up the edges inside the inner wing and all the rest of it. Don't worry about that side piece, that's all going to be cleaned later on, because I don't know how much of that I'm cutting out, because a lot of the replacement pieces going onto the side. But the rest of it's all ready to go. I'll just drop this in loosely just to show you that it does actually fit. L3. Get in. Focus. Right, here we go. Well, that's very, very roughly dropped in. It needs tapping in and all the rest of it, but there you go. That's that place well and truly filled. There's a couple of gaps on the edges where I've kind of just mismade the piece really, but that's not a big deal. I just make a double pass because the metal's quite thick, and so is the car in the places where this needs to welding. And I'm going to seam it all the way around. I'll seam weld it, not just stitch weld it and then seam sealer. I'm actually going to weld the whole thing. Right, onwards. I'll get you set up on a tripod, and then we'll do some high-speed welding. Stand by. finally, that's all welded in. So it's all solid now. That's all. It's actually quite hot, but that's 1.3 mil. That's absolutely solid. All nicely welded in. Obviously, it's not welded on the outside. There you go, because that panel's going to be replaced anyway. And I don't know how far up it's going to go, that side of the wing. And I probably won't seam seal it. What I'm thinking of doing is making a beveled edge for this here, so that it drops down, and then bond that to the outer panel. Weld it to this, but bond it to the outer panel. Anyway, we'll see. So, all that remains with all this now is, first of all, let's see. I can either paint it with Hammerite, which doesn't require a primer, or I can paint it with the zinc primer. Once the zinc primer is set, then I can go around it with seam sealer, then I can paint it. Yeah, I think that's the idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to prime all the edges and everything first. Once that's all dry, I'll come back and I'll seam seal everything. But as you can see, everything here is actually it's all seam welded. You know, none of that's getting ground off. It'll look nicer once I put some nice thick seam sealer on. But yeah, that's it. So just paint it up with some priming on. Okay, now before you paint onto any surface like this, it has to be keyed, because the paint that's going on top, primer that's going on top, needs to be able to make some sort of bond with the surface. So all I'm doing is, most of the edges don't really need roughing up, but it makes me feel better to do it. Just so that this primer actually sticks. I'm not painting the whole thing at the moment, just the edges. Just to make sure any small pinholes are filled in. Right, going to use my my favourite paint on zinc primer, zinc 182. Brilliant stuff. Doesn't take too long to dry as well, actually. And I'll make sure that wet's worked well into all the edges. Where's my brushes? I've got some really cheap Poundland brushes, which I'll show you in a second. Use them once, chuck them away. I mean, they're less than £1 each. You know, you can get them on eBay, probably 50p each. Why would you wash them? You know, use them, bin them. Right, I'll set you up on a tripod and we'll get this painted, or at least primed. What I'm doing with this now, I'm loading up the brush so there's plenty on. And what I'm going to do is just roll it over this edge. You see? And what that does, it's like when you roll the edge of a brush over a tin. You know, you're scraping the paint off the edge, off the brush. It's actually going to scrape the paint off the brush and hopefully flow it into the joint between these panels. Some of them have opened up very slightly. And once I've done this, I'm going to press them back down again together. I think some of them have warped a little bit while I'll be welding up to the edge, but it's no big deal. So there's plenty of primer in there, you know. It's going to stop the oxygen getting in, hopefully stop it rusting. That's the whole point of this. We don't want to do this now it all rust again. And remember that we are going to seam seal this as well. So fingers crossed. Right, I'll give that a little while just to soak in, and we'll just continue doing the rest of the edges. I'd sooner do this on the edges because the seam seal is quite thick, so it's not going to get into all the little corners, you know. And I want to make sure that this dribbles into the corners, but plenty on. Not stupid thick. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you put enough onto the edge, roll the brush over the edge, and it will hopefully scrape the paint or the primer into the joint. And doing the same around all of these welded points as well. I'll get that all nice and primed, and then we'll put the seam sealer over that. So this is going to handle all the little pinholes and stuff, and the seam sealer is just going to seam seal basically right over the whole thing. As you can see, most of this is really quite effectively sealed. I'm going to do as many of these surfaces as I can and push in there. You can see I'm pushing the primer into all of these welds. I'm not grinding any of these off. I'll make them look pretty with the seam sealer later. There's still a little bit of welding to do on this outside face, so I'm not going to touch any of the welds on the outside face just yet. I just want to get all of the inside sealed off for now. Again, I'm not glooping it on, but I'm not being sparing with it either, you know. And this is just parts of the car you're probably not going to see, but if you do, well, I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. It will look really nice when this is all done, as well as be nicely sealed and everything, you know. Right, I'm just going to move my camera because it's right in the middle of a very small opening there. There we go, so just sealing with the primer right along this seam. As I said before, any tiny pinholes this will fill. It's it's not stupid thick primer or anything. It's not very thin either. But what it will do is it'll be a nice base for the seam sealer then. As I said before, make a nice key for it as well. The seam seal will stick to this primer really nicely. Again, using the same technique as I used there. There's a tiny gap at the top of these, on top of this panel. So what I'm doing, I'm just rolling or scraping the brush over the edge, and the paint will be forced down basically into the panel, which is what we want in between that seam. You see they're all up nice there. If you compare this to what we had when we started it, then I think you'll agree this is a definite improvement. I'll just remove around that edge and do the other edge. Sorry if I'm blocking the other camera now. When I did the E-type, which yes is still ongoing, I would have masked all this and sprayed it, because underneath the carpet and everything in that E-type is absolutely going to be perfect. This car is going to be a bit of fun for me to drive around in with my missus, but the E-type is a very rare car, as you obviously know, but it's actually a rare one. So I want to make an absolute perfect restorer's job of that one. So I'm not quite going to be concourse, but it's not going to be far off. You know, I'm going to retire at some stage in the future, and I'd like to think that might form some part of my retirement. So, you know, we'll see. Plans for that in the future. I don't really want to sell it at all, but you know, when you get older, you might not be able to get in and out of the damn thing. So I want to be able to show everyone that I've done the best job that can possibly be done, and if I can possibly show people that the job I've done is better, or at least more attentive, more care was taken than if I paid the garage to do it, then it really has all been worthwhile. You know, if one panel doesn't rust out because I've taken a little bit more time doing this, because money really isn't an object with this, then that's okay. That's fine. And as I say, if I can show that on film, that's even better. So I think that's it for the seam sealed edges. I'll just draw that out a little bit onto the panel. And now you're thinking, oh yeah, but when you open the boot, you're going to be able to see that. You're going to be able to see the brush strokes in that bar. Well, yeah, you would if I was going to leave it like this, but I'm not. But you just have to wait to see what I do to hide all the brush strokes. So every seam that I've welded gets this. And I'm absolutely, because I don't really care about this brush, so I'm absolutely scrubbing it into these welds, putting plenty on, as I say. And while I'm here, I might as well do it at the top of those wings as well. And obviously, when I say wings, I actually mean inner wheel arch. I say that because now in here, remember I said I'm not going to grind any of these welds off, and obviously I'm not now because you can see I'm putting primer over them. Reason is you can't see them, and why should I? I've paid for the metal, I paid for the gas, paid for the electricity to weld it on. Why should I take the metal off when you can't even see it? So it doesn't have to be pretty, just has to be strong and bloody rust proof, which is what this is actually going to be. This has actually got another 3 layers of paint to go on it yet, so fingers crossed it ain't going to weld again. It ain't going to, rust again. I'm only going to go so far up this edge here because obviously I've got to weld another panel onto this. But the rest of this can all be primed, and obviously, yeah, seam sealed as well. Right, I'll just bring you around to this side so you can see. So I was watching a video earlier on. I'm sure people that subscribe to this, or all of you, almost certainly subscribe to Ian Seabrook's channel, Hubnut. If you don't, do go and have a look. It's so entertaining. I tell you what, of all the people that do walkarounds at car shows, which, let's face it, can be pretty bloody boring when someone does a walkaround, I'd say he really knows his stuff, you know. He just makes it, and it's right off the cuff as well. It's not scripted. It's as he's walking around, he'll tell you when things were made, when one engine was fitted, when a different suspension was fitted, and he's doing all this right off the cuff, you know. So good on him. Have to say, I was watching him working on that Reliant Fox earlier today. Oh, God love him. I tell you what, for someone who's obviously not a trained painter or anything, God love him, he's had a good go, you know. Most people are just like, oh, I'm not doing that, I'm just going to leave it. But not him. I mean, it's, I think he'll agree, it's what's the best thing I can, well, it's blue. It is blue, which considering the paint he used was, right, I'm going to stop now. Well, no. Yeah, well, it's blue anyway, so there you go. But God love him for having a go. He just gets stuck in and has a go, you know. Doesn't ask other people to do it unless he absolutely has to. And I admire that. I admire anyone who's willing to have a go, especially at something that they're not trained in. And I don't think it always matters about the results. Normally he does okay. You know, normally he does well. Considering. But I admire anyone who's willing to just, you know, get off their arse and just have a go, which he does. And as I say, that's really, really commendable. Really commendable. So if you subscribe to this, you'd almost certainly subscribe to him. He's got thousands and thousands of subscribers. You know, I haven't. But yeah, if you haven't, do go and have a look. Also have a look on, I've mentioned him before, Trev's blog. What a lovely, sweet guy. Such a nice guy. Very entertaining stuff that he does. And you want to watch him, you want to listen to him, you know, because he's such a lovely fella. Yeah, very, very good. Right, so I'm just going to finish this bit off the back, and we'll start letting that dry, and then I'm going to weld another couple of patches in on the boot floor, which I'll show you in a second. I'll make them up and weld them in, and once that's done, I'm going to just have to wait for this paint to dry, and I may well dive back into the floor pan under by the pedals and do some painting in there, because a lot of that will need some hammerizing. And I've just got a good deal on some hammerite on eBay. So I was going to POR 15 everything, but one, it's mad expensive to do. Which, if it's warranted, then that's fine. But if you don't prep the metal and everything properly, then it can have problems sticking. Whereas as long as you do at least a reasonable amount of prep, the hammerite will stick anyway, and it's almost as bulletproof. Right, okay, I'll move on to the next bit and then I'll show you what I'm doing. Another tip, by the way, if you want primer to go into seams and whatever, or paint to go into seams, sealer to go into seams, if you've got yourself one of these, just a blower, you can just give it a quick blast like that while it's wet, and it forces it into the seams. Now you may remember when I cut the top of this wing off, this rear wing, I actually went a bit too deep because I didn't really understand the structure underneath at the time. And I went straight through the outer panel, here, and I went straight through and into the inner wheel arch. Duh. Anyway, the weld is out. I'm here, so I might as well weld it on. Marvellous, as my great Liverpudlian mentor would have said. It's all very hilarious. Googly. Okay, so I think it's about time we basically box this lot off, and I need to do this in a specific order. This is the part that I bought from another car, which turned out to be not as brilliant as I thought it was going to be, but I'll go into that in a minute. But before I weld and fit this to this, the very last thing I need to do is paint this. Before I paint this, I need to make sure I've got some POR down in between this gap, which you may well see, between the inner and the outer skin there. before I do that, I need to make sure that that lip there is welded in, because this part of the lip, there we go, this part of the lip actually wasn't welded in properly by whoever did this last. So, order of events. Make sure this is all clamped up nice and tight, because I've sealed in between the two thicknesses of metal, which basically form the lip here as it bends underneath. Yeah, clamp it all up so it's nice and tight. Clean it off a little bit. Weld that up. Once that's welded up, I can put the POR 15 in the gap. Once I put the POR 15 in the gap, we then go on to fitting that, which basically doesn't mean welding it, it means fitting it up too. So basically, you know, cutting this and this to match each other, so that will match the gap there. Once that's done, I'll put that back to one side, and then I can paint all this finally. And then I need to leave it then, because obviously I'm not going to try and weld all this with paint solvent flashing off and everything else. That's a very short way to set things on fire. So, I nearly said that then. But it is indeed a very short way to set things on fire. Right, that's it. So, as I say, first thing we're going to be underneath this wheel arch and get it clamped up and welded. Well, here's something that's going to help out today. Went to Home and Bargain last week, which is basically it's almost like a Poundland, and I bought this for £10, and it's an LED light. Now at the moment it's got batteries in the back, but it'd be very, very easy to convert this so we could actually use a power supply of some description. It's probably only, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it probably works on 6 volts by the look of it. That's great, it's an LED light. I won't put it right at the camera because it'll probably burst into flame, but I press the little button here if I can find it. You can see it's bright as hell. 2 settings on it, like a lot of these have. So it turns off probably half of the LED ring. But a great little rugged thing. Rubber reinforced corners and stuff. And it was a tenner, which is marvellous. Also bought a few other little bits and pieces over the last week or so since I've been in here, which I'll show you as I use them probably. Right, let's get that wheel arch done. There we go. So that's the back of the rear wheel arch. You see there's no welds in there. So what I'm going to do first of all, drill holes through to plug weld it, just enough to go through the first skin, scratch a little bit of the second skin so that the weld takes nicely, then clamp it all up around those holes, and then we'll get the welding done. So as I say, clamp in next. There we go. So there's our holes drilled. Need to tidy those up and clamp them. Okay, so there's our clamps in place, and what I'm doing, I'm also feeling behind and checking it to check that it's actually pinched this panel together really nicely. Where there is a gap, then that gap actually exists between the top here and the bottom of this panel where it curls under, which again is why I'm going to almost inject some POR 15 until it seeps out through any gaps that I've left here once it's been welded, obviously when the panel's cooled down. So I'm doing everything I can to stop it rusting again in the future. We can only do our best. Okay, let's get to welding. Oh no! Oh, there's still a little bit left. Should be enough to do the little bit that I'm doing. And the reason some of this is spacing a little bit is that in between this seam I've put Vactan. Now Vactan's got two active components, one of which is phosphoric acid, which deals with the rust and kind of passivates it and all the rest of it, and the other one is it's like a rubber copolymer which actually seals it in, and what you're seeing burning off is probably the copolymer, I would think, which is seeped between the seams. And you see why we do this in the order we do now. Obviously if I'd put the POR 15 in first, any gaps in these seams, which there inevitably will be because I'm not pulling this whole thing off, any gaps in these seams would have POR 15 in them and it would just burn off. So we don't want to put it in and then burn it off. We want to do all the burning and flashing and sparking and then we'll put it in. Right, let's keep on going. Ooh, a little fire. Stop it. That's probably some of the sealer that I'll put in on the inside, on the back side of that joint. I think there's one more to do on this end, then we're done. There's something interesting just to show you. I'll bring this around so you can just see. Maybe, hopefully, maybe. I'm going to point to it just so I find my hand. It's quite difficult, this. There we go. Okay, it's just here. Now you see this. This drill obviously hasn't gone through the first panel because I'm feeling that I think that's pretty close to the panel at the back. So I don't want to drill right the way through. So what I've done, I've really thinned out the metal in this hole that you can see here. It's almost gone through the panel. And trust me, when I hit it with the heat from this welder, it is going to burn through what's left of the thickness of this panel, and then it will go into the panel at the back. So if you can get through most of the thickness of this, then just be aware that it will work. And to be honest, if you can burn it hot enough, which I'm not going to do with this because it will burn all sorts of paint off, but even if these two panels were just pressed together, if you could burn hot enough without even drilling this panel, then it would melt its way through and push its way through. But I'm not going to do that. Obviously I don't want to burn it that hot. So as I say, the heat from the welder will burn off the rest of the thickness inside this little hole, and it will weld the two together. So that's one more, and then we'll just get that done, and then we'll see how we've done. Right, one more. There you go. Get it nice and warm, and it will burn its way through. And that is solid. Much better than it was before. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to let this cool down, take the clips off, and then I'll grind it, because again, grinding puts heat into the panel, so I want to get any heat away from this panel before I start putting any sealer in down this gap. So I'll take a grinder to this, and then we'll put some POR in the gap, and I'll let it flow in. And I'm also going to grind it and seal it and everything at the back of here. So I'm just going to do my best, and it's as much as I can do without putting a new panel on, or which I don't want to do. Right, so now, a grinder. Okay, so sorry about the sound, but now we just need to give it a little tickle with the angle die grinder, and we'll make it all nice, and I'll show you what it looks like. There we go. Okay, so this is how we're going to leave it for now. It looks quite rough on the camera. It's actually fairly smooth. Smooth as it needs to be. Show the back of the wheel. That's probably easy to focus on. There we go. Now again, if I was putting brand new wheel arches and everything on this, you wouldn't see any of these welds. POR 15, rust preventative. Right, now, in case you're wondering just how gluey and how much adhesion and how much this stuff sets up, take a look at this. This is me trying to get the lid off the original tin. Now you'll notice there aren't dribbles all over the place on this tin, so I've kept this quite clean. But look what I've had to do to get it open this time. Now obviously I must have got some on the rim somewhere, and it's obviously stuck. You know, there's a tiny bit left in the bottom of this one. What I had actually done anyway was decant it into a couple of tins like this. So it's actually mainly it's in two of these tins. But look at that. I know there are some issues where you have to prep the surface properly and everything, but once it sets and once it adheres, this is what it does. This is how it's glued the tin on, or the lid onto the tin. And as I say, I actually did my best to keep that as clean as I could. But there's only the dregs left in this anyway, which should be just enough for what I'm doing. So, yeah, just a warning. If you buy POR 15, especially in the tin that size, it's just on a litre, it's quarts if you like, then do plan on decanting it into other tins, or you're going to end up with a tin like this you can't get into. Something else that I'm going to do while I'm putting the paint into here, obviously I'm going to be putting a fair amount in, is I'm going to be blowing it, not at full blast, but put some compressed air down there so I should force it into the seams, let it find its way around. It's fairly thin, it's not stupid thin, but it's fairly thin paint, POR. So in this heat anyway, it's going to be quite thin, at least until it sets off. And yeah, if there's enough, I'll just keep going with the painting because I don't want to waste it because that tin ain't resealing. So yeah, we'll probably do all the insides of these. Right, okay, let's get the paint in there. Now I just wanted to take you off time lapse just to show you something, show you what I meant by dribbling through. Obviously you can see that's all down there in the gap, loads in there, more than you normally put on because I want it to flow through. And you can see actually it's dripping down anyway onto the floor in a couple of places, so that's good. That means it's getting into the seams and stuff. Right, I'll blow some air down this and keep on going. There we go. So I'm starting to run a little bit low on what's in the pot because there wasn't much there in the first place. It's covered in really well actually. I'm going to use whatever it dripped onto the floor. It's still POR 15, I'm not proud. And this stuff costs an absolute fortune. That'll go on lovely. All I'm doing here is just using up what's left in the tin really. The main point of doing this now is to get it painted and hopefully on the way to drying before we put the large panel over the top and cover all this up. Obviously I can reach this once that's on, so this isn't so crucial to do it now. But if there's a little bit left in what's left of this tin, obviously that tin's not going to be resealed. So I might as well keep going, it certainly can't hurt, you know. But all this is going to be done again anyway, this little bit. And I've got a couple of other plans as well to hide the welds and, you know, various other things. But I think if you look back on some of the old videos, I think we can agree this is a bit better than it was.